Okay, so I have my first two guests here in the studio with me. I'm delighted to be joined by Orla Hamersley, and I have Sean. Oh, I've lost your name, Sean. What is it again? Sean Fitzsimons. Sorry, Sean. I know I wrote it on. I have so many bits of paper here in front of me. I wrote it on the wrong piece of paper. You're both very welcome, and thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
It's really nice to see you. We do like having people coming in to see us here in the station, and I'm really interested in this because I think it sounds like a fantastic thing to do. And I'll maybe start with you, Orla, to tell us a little bit about what this is. We're talking about, I'll probably pronounce this wrong, is it Allihies?
Allihies.
Allihies.
Yeah.
See, it's easy. I was here trying to pronounce it myself. It's the Allihies to Bunmahon Miners Trail.
That's correct, yeah.
So can you just tell us a little bit about the history of it?
Well, there's a copper mine in Allihies and there's a copper mine in Bunmahon. And during the 18th century, those industries were flying in Ireland. But there was a downturn in the mine in Allihies, and a lot of people, miners, needed to move on for work. So they would have walked the journey from the copper mines in Allihies the whole way along the south of Ireland up to Bunmahon in search of work. And then they would have sent word to their wives and families when they found work to come and join them.
So you have, now Allihies is down in the Beara Peninsula?
It's right on the furthest edge of the Beara Peninsula, the furthest village in Ireland from Dublin.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh almighty. And they came all the way up then to Waterford.
Yeah.
And they didn't even have they didn't have work secured though, did they?
No, they were only in the hope of work.
So they walked all this. How far is it?
It's 250 kilometres.
They walked this in the hope of getting a job. And what would happen if they didn't? Would they just walk back?
Yeah.
They would just walk.
They would have turned on their heels and went back. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Some of them would have made it maybe to Swansea because the ore would have been exported to Swansea from Bunmahon. Some ended up in Butte in Montana.
My goodness, and I suppose how would they tell their families then? You know that they were going to go on to Swansea or to Butte or.
Well, there would have been a lot of people. We've assumed there would have been a lot of people travelling the route, and they would have sent word back with them.
Sent word back.
Yeah, so it would probably have taken weeks for the information to get back.
It's an alien sort of thing at the moment to us living in an age of instant communication, isn't it? That you would have to travel so far in the hope of getting work and then having to maybe take weeks away from your family and then before you could get them any word of what you're going to do.
Yeah, there was harrowing stories and folklore about the events. There's a story about one particular lady who had not heard from her husband, decided to take it upon herself take herself and her children on the journey up to Bunmahon. Lost half her children on the way due to starvation and exposure. When she got to Bunmahon, found that her husband was being buried because he had been killed in a mining accident. So she turned on her heels, didn't know anybody in Bunmahon, so decided to go back to Allihies. And the remainder of her children joined on the return journey.
Oh my goodness!
So that's one particular story that hits hard, particularly with mothers and family men.
Absolutely.
But there is more, and we're hoping to find out more about the journey, and that maybe it might reignite some memories and distant memories of folklore in the communities that we passed through on the way.
Now, Sean, can I ask you, I'm just very interested on who found out about this or who researched it or how did it come to light that this walk actually existed, that this happened, and then that you decided, do you know what, why don't we recreate that walk? How did that come about?
Well, what happened a number of years ago, first of all, a number of the miners that came across from Allihies, they actually settled in Bunmahon, and their families have lived there since. So we can trace people back from Bunmahon all the way back to Allihies. And one of the founders of the group, Greta Whelan, her family can trace its origins back to Allihies. And Greta came up with the idea in 2011 that it would be great, if we could recreate it. And it was taken up then by a few individuals who said, okay, we'll try it. And there was only 5 or 6 on the first year, just to prove that it could be done. And then it was taken up after that by other people that wanted to jump on board and said, yeah, this is a great challenge. Could be a good week and everything else. And it's grown since.
It fascinates me really, you know, that you're walking in the footsteps of your ancestors or ancestors, people who did this, and that, you know, 5 hardy souls or 6 hardy souls decided that they were going to do this at the start. And how did they get on? I mean, what did they find? Did they find it an easy thing to do or very difficult?
It wasn't easy. The only plan they had was to start in Allihies and finish in Bunmahon. They had no pre-planned trail to follow or pre-planned route to follow. They just sort of headed in the general direction and bedded down where they could, sometimes in sheds, sometimes in bed and breakfast, sometimes in various places. And the rough route was laid out at that stage. The following year there was a few more people involved, myself included, and we actually tried to get the most direct route away from the main roads to Bunmahon, from Allihies to Bunmahon. So we started off on that year going over the mountain from Allihies. That brings us into Casttownbere, okay, and then travel along the road to, what was it, Adrigole, okay, where we stayed the night in a hostel there. And we stay there now every year. It's a wonderful place. And then we head off from there, and last year was our first year to actually go over the mountain then as far as Glengariff, which was a long sort of first part of that day's journey. But the weather was with us, and everybody was the first time up there, and it was terrific. The views from up the mountains and everything was absolutely stunning.
I can imagine that. I have friends who lived on Bear Island, and we used to go down that direction, and the scenery, it's absolutely magical down there.
Yeah.
We forget, we tend to go away and rave about other places, but when you come back and look at what we have ourselves, it must be fantastic. And how many hours a day would you walk?
I suppose we start off normally about 9:30 in the morning, and normally get to our destination by 6 o'clock that evening, or before, between 4 and 6, depending on, you know,
How many rest stops we have.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if the weather is good, you will stop and you'll take in the beauty of the whole journey and the scenery that's surrounding us here. And you might have the odd refreshment along the way as well. Of course,
absolutely.
Because that's important, because you have to keep your fluids up.
Of course you do.
Yeah. But, we normally get in, say, between 4 and 6 o'clock, depending on the length of the day. Each day varies sort of between, I suppose, 30 to 40 kilometres a day, roughly.
That's good walking, you know. That is a good day's walking.
It is. It's hard going, but it is thoroughly enjoyable, and you meet people along the road that you never would have thought, you wouldn't in normal circumstances run into them, and it gives you a whole different outlook.
I'm sure, and as well, you're sort of dependent on the generosity of others as well, you know, and as you go along. And
yeah, we get great support from people along the way. We've
Hugely.
been given pizzas and put up for the night and free drinks, and just you know, support, moral support is great.
Yeah.
along the way.
Exactly. And I mean, what do people sort of hope to get out of it when they decide to take this? Is this we were talking a little bit earlier about the comparisons between this and the Camino Way. You know, people talk about that as a spiritual awakening, more or less. If somebody undertakes this, what would they sort of expect to get out of it, or what have people told you at the end of it that they've gotten out of it?
Well, I did the whole journey last year for the first time. I did it in 2012, just a couple of days, and 2013, a couple of days. But last year I did the full journey. And I have 4 kids at home, and what I found was the headspace I got. Just was me on my own, and a lot of the time you are on your own on the road, and it just gives you a time for reflection and contemplation. So you could see there is, I suppose, spiritual element to it, but it's not a pilgrimage.
No, sure.
But there is, and you get that there's a relaxed tone. The pace of everything is far slower. You know, you're taking your time. You get a chance to look at the scenery, look over hedges, see the wonderful things people have done with their gardens, strange little things people do, little carvings, and just little oddities that you would never spot when you're driving at 100 miles an hour past in a car.
Indeed, we tend to stay off the main roads as much as possible.
Sure.
And in taking the back roads, we get to observe so much more about what's happening in the countryside. and appreciating it so much more.
And I suppose you're in the moment as well, which we don't tend to be. You're always 10 miles ahead. I know I would be a very busy person at the moment, and studying. I'm doing a degree. I'm working. I've got kids. Blah blah blah. So you're constantly thinking 2 days ahead, even sometimes. So this really gives you a chance to just be in the moment and just appreciate what you are.
All you're thinking about is the next stop when you will actually regroup. Last year, Sean did logistics, so. In the afternoon break, Sean would be after pulling over somewhere and would have a nice lunch ready for us. So, your thoughts would be, well, getting there, chatting to whoever you're walking with, maybe walk by yourself for a while.
Yeah.
And just enjoy the moment.
And what's the group mix? Tell us what type of people would go on the walk with you.
Well, 8 of us did it last year, the whole journey, but we had people join us for a day or two.
Yeah.
And the youngest that participated last year was Molly. She was 17, and the oldest then was John Joe, who 70. I know it was
70 something.
70 plus.
Always have a bit of a lure of mystery about it.
Yeah, John Joe and Philly were in their 70s, and they joined us for the last day, and they did the full last day.
Excellent. So there's a big mix of people, and it's a very, very interesting concept, and what exactly are you hoping? You're talking about it's in its 5th year, right? And it's happening in August, so we've plenty of time to think about it and to be even getting out on a couple of walks just to get yourself.
Our formal training hasn't started yet. We do group training in Bunmahon, normally a Tuesday and a Thursday, but that won't happen until after Easter when the evenings brighten up.
Oh, sure, and I mean it's the perfect time of the year to be out and about in August to do it. Like you said before, the weather was with you. I'm sure it must be spectacular in August if the weather is nice.
Last year we had a fantastic year because there wasn't one drop of rain in the whole week. And the year before that, I think we had 2 days of rain.
There was some days were pretty damp.
Being Irish weather, we can expect to get maybe 3 days rain. But last year was just a pet week.
Perfect.
There wasn't a drop of rain.
There was a little shower as we came into Youghal. And all it did was...
We just wanted to cool you down a bit.
Cool us down. But then this most spectacular rainbow appeared.
Beautiful.
So even the shower was beautiful.
It was beautiful. Yeah. So, I mean, do people sort of pay to do this, or do you do it for a charity, or what is the setup behind it?
Yeah, it's a charity walk, and we're all volunteers, and it's starting to get a little bit more formal now. But we haven't ironed everything out completely. There is a cost involved. You have to cover your own accommodation and your food. And all donations then towards the charity would be appreciated. Sure,
and you haven't decided on your charity for this year yet?
Not yet, it hasn't been nominated, but local charities, normally what we fundraise for the Lifeboat last year, local school and the Tidy Towns,
that's your remit, I
that
suppose.
Kind of group, yeah.
Excellent. And as you're coming along, you're talking about coming into places like Youghal now on your way, and you're asking for people to help as well, aren't you, for stories and folklore from areas? Yeah,
this year the last day of the walk on the 22nd will coincide with Heritage Week, and this year Heritage Week's theme is our industrial and design past, so it fits with us beautifully. So this year we were thinking we really would like to push the historical aspect of the walk, and none of us are historians, so we may have the stories wrong, and we would like to know if anybody along the route had any folklore or any stories or knew any kind of information that they'd be able to fill us in on, just to give us a little bit more connection to the people that walked it.
Yeah, and obviously these people would have passed through places like this, and it would be very important to, if they would there be there wouldn't be pictures from back then, would there? No, there wouldn't. But so it would all be word of mouth. It would have
been word of mouth. We would expect, I suppose, the people would have been reasonably literate.
Yeah,
and like Peg Sayers and that was literate. So there may have been some letters or communications, but I would have imagined most of it would have been, they would have met somebody on the road to market, shared the story, and that would have been passed on.
Absolutely.
So the next person they met on the road to market, and so on.
And so on. And if somebody wants to, I'm consciously aware we're just running out of time, I could stay here and talk all day to you about it. If somebody wants to get involved, either by actually doing the walk or by contacting you with stories of folklore or anything else, how would they get in touch?
Yeah, our email address is a2bminerstrail@gmail.com, and our website is www.a2bminerstrail.wordpress.com, and we're on Facebook and Twitter as well.
And can I ask you, are either of you related in any way to any of the miners?
No, we're
No.
not. I think we're both blow-ins. Very much so. I'm originally from Dublin, but I'm in the area for the past 20 years.
Right. So you're still a blow-in, though. So you'll
very
always be.
much so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm from Waterford City, so I would be considered a blow-in as well.
I think some of the people that came up from Allihies original are still blow-ins.
Are still blow-ins, absolutely. So, I mean, you fit right in there.
Well, we
You
have
fit right
one
in.
girl now that found out subsequently, after doing the walk herself, that she was directly related to one of the people that did the walk, Catherine.
That's amazing.
So it was like that's spectacular when we find out things like that. But it would be
Absolutely.
nice to just find out some of the, you know, like last year we found one of the butter roads. We think we did. And we think that's the way the miners would have walked.
And what's a butter road now?
It would have been a route to market.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Where there's various routes around the country where they used to bring the butter to the central markets, either in Cork or Dublin or whatever, and these are known as the butter roads. But a lot of them have been overgrown and everything else in the past, century. But we do believe that a lot of the miners would have travelled these old butter roads, old butter routes, and we have come across sections of it along the route, and something we wouldn't have come across if we followed the main road.
Sure, absolutely.
We've only found because we've taken
The alternative
Yeah.
route,
Yeah.
the road less travelled, as you
purely
say.
by accident.
Yeah.
And we'd love to know, are we right?
Yeah, sure. So
You know.
there's bound to be somebody out there who knows, the answer to that question, and it's a real. Do you video it or anything like that as you're doing it? Do you do a blog or anything like
Well,
that?
we have our WordPress page website where we put up photographs, and everybody has cameras now, so we all
Yeah.
take millions of photographs,
Sure.
and they all get put up. And you see them on Facebook. If you look at our Facebook page,
Yeah.
there's loads of photographs from the past few years.
I've been looking at some of them there, and they're lovely. Everybody looks really happy and contented in it.
and considering the condition our feet are in, like
Yeah.
with the smiles that we're all bearing, it's amazing.
It is amazing. And, I think it's an absolutely fascinating subject. I think you could make a book and a movie and all sorts of stuff out of it. You never know, you might get a screenwriter listening somewhere who might take you up on that. But listen, is there anything else that you want to add just before we go?
There is one thing. One of the things that I need, being responsible for logistics, is if there's anybody out there can help, maybe when we're coming into Youghal and so on, somebody that can set up tents that could help from that point of view on the day that we arrive in Youghal, which is what day?
Thursday.
The Thursday. Can't remember the date. But we start on the 15th, so it would be about the 21st.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Finishes on the Friday, does it? The 22nd?
It's Saturday the 22nd,
So it would be the 20th.
20th,
Yeah.
yeah. So, because that takes an awful lot of pressure off me in trying to prepare meals for the guys when they come
course.
in and so on. So if there's somebody around who wants to come down, and if they can put up tents, or even if they can cook, I can put up tents and they can cook, whatever.
Whichever
But,
suits
yeah.
them. You're just looking for volunteers to come along and
to
give a
help
hand.
out. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there'll be lots of people that would love to volunteer in August. And listen, thank you so much to Sean Fitzsimons, to Orla Hamersley. We could talk for hours and hours about this. I'm so sorry we've run out of time, but we might come in again a little bit closer to the
Yeah,
date
yeah.
and we'll
We'd be
talk a bit
delighted,
more about it.
delighted, yeah.
And any time we'd love to have you here. So thanks very much for coming in.
And thank you.